Actually, I will say this. We've been getting more people pitching guests.
Yeah.
And the guests that have come in have been great.
They've been great.
Fredrik's one of them.
them.
And it's so cool that this is happening.
I love it.
And I think it's like if you're out there and we're going to have to reorder this edit. This shouldn't be at the very, very end. Maybe this should be at the beginning. But I feel we have an announcement to make. We've been getting more people suggesting guests to us. And if you listen to the show and you think someone's a great fit, actually suggest them to us. We've had multiple guests come on. They've crushed it. And you know who's going to be a good fit. So tell us.
Tell us.
It makes the whole thing more exciting and more interesting. So please, if you think someone's going to be a great fit for us, email us at ttlpod@whiskey.com or just like contact us on LinkedIn or what have you, whoever you want. We want to hear who you think should be on the show. Hello and welcome to Talking Too Loud with Chris Savage. I am your host, Chris Savage, and I'm joined by the one, the only, Sylvie Lubau. Sylvie.
Give it up.
Here we are again. Doing another episode. Recording back-to-back days, which has actually been a delight.
We're powerful. We are a powerful team now.
Yes, there's a lot of power. There's a lot of energy. We got a lot of energy, a lot of power from our guest today, Fredrik Thomassen, who is the founder and CEO of a design company called Superside. And Superside is a creative subscription service that helps businesses manage design at scale. So if you have big projects, you want to work with high quality designers, you can sign up with Superside. Fun conversation. Talked a lot about, managing stress, talked a lot about nature, talked about mountaineering, talked about a lot of stuff. So we have that coming up for you very soon.
Yeah. But first, what's got you talking too loud, Savage?
Oh, what's got me talking too loud? Did we talk about movies the other day?
We started to talk about Mission Impossible and my feelings on the latest installment. Were there other movies you were wanting to talk about?
We didn't talk about Barbie, right?
We didn't talk about Barbie. I haven't seen Barbie yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I haven't seen Barbie or Oppenheimer.
What?
I know. What am I doing with my life? Who am I?
I have honestly, so I saw Oppenheimer in the morning at the Providence Place Mall, one of only 30 IMAXs in the world with 70 millimeter projection.
Oh, boy.
It was a delight, but a downer. Then I saw Barbie later that night, and it was a delight and an upper. It was like, and I have been thinking to myself, like, man, it is fun to go to the movies. It is so fun. And I wish since then, it was like 2 weeks ago or something, I'm just like, why can there not be another one? Like, give me something else, please. Let me go and buy popcorn and candy and a massive vat of Coke. That's all I want. It's just a great movie and all those normal popcorn things.
I was going to ask, do you get popcorn? Do you have to get popcorn when you're at the movies?
So that day I got one popcorn, which seemed like enough.
The nighttime popcorn.
The nighttime. Yeah. It seemed like a little extreme. I'd had like a massive iced coffee before Oppenheimer.
Ooh, and that's a dangerous combo.
Levine was like yelling at me. He's like, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, you really shouldn't.
I did. Did have to get up and pee. That's that's what happens. But it was 3 hours. I was just like, is this a good moment? And you're sprinting down the steps and you're trying.
You're like, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall.
Don't fall. Yes. But I just that feeling. There's something about this. I think it's just so satisfying.
Oh yeah, you're talking to a real movie theater dog.
I know you love movie theaters. It's so satisfying when you're at a great movie in the theater. It's hard to beat that.
It really is. It's an incredible feeling, and the smells and the when like
the sticky stuff under your feet.
Yeah. Step on some gum
and eating too much candy.
It is really good.
It's just Sour Patch Kids like mixed with Junior.
I was thinking about
dumped in the mouth.
That is not my combo, but good for you. But I was thinking about taking myself to the movies tonight, so we'll see.
Tonight.
Which
one what will you see?
So Barbie and Oppenheimer I have to see with my boyfriend. That's like a pact. But Theater Camp, which is a little indie about theater camp. That looks like very, very funny. Yeah. That's high on my list. Past Lives. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Don't know what it is.
I'll hit you with a list.
I would love a list.
Yeah.
On that list. We should release that list. Sylvie's summer movie flicks list of September 2023.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, good. Great. What's got you talking too loud?
Oh, I feel like it wasn't movies, but now it's movies. You know what? We're going to stay on movies. So during the pandemic, when it was like peak pandemic,
when you were getting COVID every week?
Before that. This is, we're talking like early days, like going to the grocery store maybe once a week, you know, like putting mail in paper bags. You know, everyone's trying to fill their evening time in different ways. And I started doing this movie trivia on Instagram, and people loved it. And what it was just like, I would do 5 rounds, 5 gifts, name that movie, right?
Okay.
And
like on an Instagram live or like on stories?
On stories, yeah. Okay. On stories. And they're on my Instagram, Rock Lobster, 3 R's at the beginning. So take a look. But I'm going to bring them back because they were great. They were great. Do that.
That's great.
I never made good on my promise to award prizes. I kept saying, I was like, prizes. And maybe it's time for me to...
It'd be funny if you went back and gave prizes to those people.
Do you think? Because I have the winners.
Oh, you should absolutely do that.
Do all the winners need Talking Too Loud hats that have nothing to do with Name That Movie, but everything to do with Talking Too Loud?
No, they need something that's with Name That Movie. They need, custom
swag.
Custom Sylvie swag.
It's a design query that maybe our guest can help us solve.
Oh, yes. You could work with Superside. And we're fortunate to have Fredrik, the CEO, here to help us all learn more. So let's jump to that interview with him.
Let's do it.
Fredrik, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited that you're here with us today. And how are you? How's your day going?
Great. Thanks for inviting me. Day going pretty well. I've had a couple of weeks with 2 kids with chicken pox, and so just sort of recovering from that, trying to get some sleep.
I'm sorry, that sucks.
Get back in the game, but
what are the techniques that you're using with like these days to like help with that? Is it like I've seem to remember when I was like a kid, I had chicken pox, and it was like the oatmeal bath. You know, it was like take a bunch of oatmeal and dump it in the bathtub and get in there. Are people still doing that?
I haven't heard. You know, we've been googling around and that never really popped up. But great advice. Maybe we'll try that.
Try it
later. Yeah,
it's a good one.
It's a great idea.
Well, look, as you know, this show is called Talking Too Loud, and the reason it's called Talking Too Loud is because when I get excited, like when I get excited about chickenpox or anything, when I get excited, I cannot control the volume of my voice, and so. We love to have people on, talk to them about the things that they get excited about, talk about things that I get excited about, and we love to start the show by hearing what has you excited. So what has you talking too loud these days? What has you really excited right now?
Yeah, for me, it's usually when I get to talk about nature in one way or another. I'm really excited about nature. I think everyone should be. I live in Oslo. It's a tiny city, can't even really call it a city, maybe more like a town, but it has a fantastic forest surrounding it, and I spend a great deal of my free time outside, and just super excited to talk about nature and the need to preserve it, and the need to restore ancient forest. In Europe there's hardly any old forest left. In Norway, which is one of the countries with the most forest, it's like 0.3% of the land mass is truly untouched forest, and in continental Europe it's hardly anything. So in America it's actually much better, but in Europe it's
don't hear that much these days.
You don't hear that every day.
Yeah.
Are you? Yeah, I saw when I asked you that question. I just want to say this for people who are listening and not watching. I did see a sparkle in your eye as you said nature. I saw the sparkle go. Are you like taking your kids out hiking? Are you camping? Are you? I mean, I've only been in Norway when I was a kid. I don't remember it very well. But, like, are you going to the fjords? Like, what are you doing out there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm trying to do everything, and pardon me for not talking too loud. I have a 2-year-old right behind the wall that I'm trying to not wake, so I'm going to do this very low voice. But still very excited voice. Everything, we're going all around. I used to do quite a bit of mountain climbing and you know, just like long hikes and both winter and summer in Norway and elsewhere. But now with kids, it's harder to do, and so I've gotten really into this whole forest thing. You don't have to go that far, just to drive 20 minutes or something and walk around inside the forest. So yeah, definitely bring the kids in there, and it's super easy because they play with anything in the forest. Everything is fun for them, and so you can just stay out the whole day. The only problem with Norway is the weather, obviously, but aside from that, it's great.
Yeah, I relate to that. I feel like there's like we underestimate how much joy kids can get from the right outdoor experience. And when you were saying that, it made me think about like just the beach, but also just like mud. And I think when my kids were like 2 and 4, like we would just like take them outside. There'd be like a muddy thing, and they're like, "This is the most fun thing in the world." And they're just like covered and digging through sticks. I was like, I mean, there's not a really comfortable place for me here, but they seem so happy. Like, great, this is good.
Exactly.
All right. Well, look, thank you for telling us about that. And that's awesome. And I hope everyone can get a sparkle in their eye the way that you do when you talk about nature. But I have a feeling you're also excited about Superside. So I would love for you as the founder and CEO of Superside to explain what it is and what makes you different.
Totally. So we're kind of Amazon Prime for creative services. It's a sort of subscription that you buy, and you get access to any capability under the sun with zero friction, and you just pay by the hour, whatever it costs. It deducts from your subscription. You can buy everything from presentation design and ad design up to sophisticated video production and brand and marketing strategy. And so really whatever you need, and it's the most flexible and easiest way to increase the speed of your design and creative teams and to increase the creative performance. So yeah, we're really excited about that. It's something we think every single company in the world should get.
And where did the idea come from?
So I worked in e-commerce at the time, and originally in Indonesia. Actually, I was part of building an e-commerce company in Indonesia, and remember working with a lot of just really talented people there, and thought, you know, it should be a magical teleport to make sure that these guys can participate in the global labor market, because if they could, they would make 10 times as much. And so Superside in its inception was really around that, and I've my whole career been primarily working in marketing, and for me it's kind of just become more and more obvious that creative is such a huge differentiator when it comes to marketing, and it's becoming ever more important as, you know, the algorithms and so on are taking kind of charge of the media buying, and you see more and more products just purely driven by amazing creative. I saw you were drinking a box of liquid death, which is just an exceptional story of how creative is able to drive
it's unbelievable
marketing, but just overall kind of company performance, and create almost like a new category just purely based on amazing creative, right? So that kind of shows the power of creative, and it's just a really exciting intersection between lots of different fields.
That's awesome. And I feel like what I saw, and tell me if this is right, is you got started with like a more broad set of requests that you could go to Superside for, and then you focused in on design. Can you tell us about how you made that decision, if that's the case?
Yeah, totally. That's the case. I'm not sure if you've been browsing around on archive.org and checked out my terrible website from 2015 or something. So I mean, I'm a very kind of easy guy in some ways, and so starting up the company, we just made a website and said all these things that we could do, and we put the chat widget from some chat company in the middle and said, just tell us what you want. These are all the things that we can do, and we had nothing. You know, and some startups are, you spend years trying to like figure out the concept and do R&D and stuff, and we were just let's just put it up. And then nothing happened for like a while, but all of a sudden some like random people just starting submitting tasks on the chat thing, and we were like, oh, let's try to, do those tasks, and went to Upwork and Fiverr to find people to help us, or just did the tasks ourselves, and it was everything, data entry or research or design, anything and everything, and we didn't have any kind of credit card system or invoicing or anything. And so after we had completed the task, we would just sort of send a message back and be like, if you could pay us this amount, that would be amazing. And maybe half the people paid. The other half was probably just scammers or unhappy. So that was kind of the start. And then just, built on that to where we are today through lots of bad decisions and some good decisions and lots of learnings along the way.
Where do you know where those initial customers came from? Like, you put up that broad website, and then and you said just people randomly started filling out the form, which I love that description. But like, do you know where they were coming from, or was it did you
super random? Some people we knew, some people presumably came from Google search. Some people may had heard that from friends of ours that we had started this. We started sending out lots of spammy emails to lots of people, which was not a very successful tactic, but just sort of went on Facebook, spread it out.
Yeah, you're just trying.
Some people just stumbled upon the website, and so randomly we got in touch with some British solar cell installation company that got us to sit on Google Maps and map the size of roofs in the UK to determine whether they were fit for a solar rooftop solar installation. Just super random, and learned a lot from just doing all these things ourselves, and learned kind of that the freelancer marketplaces like Upwork and Fiverr and 99 Designs in many ways were fundamentally broken. And back in 2015, everyone kind of thought online work is going to be hundreds of billions of dollars, people working online. Everyone thought these platforms would be the future, but we just felt that the quality wasn't what it needed to be, and we wanted to build something that was both better for the freelancers themselves, who were all kind of complaining about the platforms, and better for the customers. And so in a way, we've built kind of a company that is in the middle between a freelancer marketplace and a traditional agency, and we're calling it creative as a service. And there's now, 50 or 100 companies in this emerging category, and I think it's I just think it's a really nice model, much better for customers and freelancers alike.
I mean, the vision of it makes a lot of sense, and you instantly get it. And I'm very interested because I have a bunch of friends who run agencies. One of the common questions and concerns is, how do you scale keeping things high quality? How do you, it's hard even when everyone works for you full time. So is there a secret sauce, or can you not tell us? How are you actually keeping the quality high as you connect these people together?
It is really hard. And I don't think there is a secret sauce. And I think it being hard is what we're trying to solve. And that's why it's valuable for customers. And that's why it takes a lot of hard work. And having solved a lot of those problems, and we still have lots of problems left to solve, but us having solved a lot of those problems and scaled to the size that we are today is in a way our moat or defensibility. And very often people think about defensibility and it's always network externalities or virality or these things, but sometimes it's defensible just to do something that is very hard. And quite few agencies are really able to scale past $5-10 million annual recurring revenue type scale. And so there's some good reasons for that. We've had all of those challenges and solved some of them, and there are definitely many more left to solve.
I'm going to get specific here, but you feel free to not answer this if you don't want. But so if I let's say I bid something out, so we're going to do some big event here at Wistia, and we have a lot of other stuff going on. We're like, okay, we need design help, and we need it to be really high quality, and we need it to match our brand. And we go to you all, and we're like, we bid a project, and we say, hey, this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to look like. Walk me through what happens. Do we put the budget up front? Or do you tell us the budget? Like how flexible are the timelines? Like I guess what I'm trying to say is the specifics really matter here, and I would love to hear how that works.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're not really doing the agency model where we do pitch work and bid on a specific project and all those things. We feel that that's in a way inefficient, and we understand why it's interesting and useful, but we're trying to keep prices low, and we're trying to keep utilization high, and we're trying to be efficient. And so what we're doing is we're saying that the way to interact with us here at Superside is through a subscription model. You buy a monthly subscription anywhere from $3,000 a month to tens of thousands of dollars per month if you're a larger enterprise customer, and you get a certain number of hours included, and then it's just up to you to make the most of that, and we're obviously trying to help, but we are placing some burden on the customer in terms of creating high quality briefs for what you want.
Got it. So like we get in there, Wizard starts paying $5,000 a month. We have briefs that we're sending out to the creatives on, let's say, a monthly basis. And there's different people that are pitching on like, hey, pick me to do the brief kind of a deal. And then we select those people and then they do it. And if they're great, we keep working with them. Is that the idea?
So as part of the onboarding, we build you a dedicated team for the capabilities that you've said that you need. So you get a creative project manager, you get a creative lead, you get one or two or maybe three designers for the specific capabilities that you need. Let's say you are super focused on advertising design, then we get you some ad designers. But then if you need other types of capabilities, we just loop those in and work with you guys on demand.
That's interesting.
That's cool. That's great. And that does seem different. That's why I'm trying to get specific here. It feels like it's a different model, and customers taking some risk, but in return, I mean, even having dedicated resources is not a thing you always get.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's I think very useful for many customers to have a dedicated team in combination with the flexibility to scale up and down, and in a way that's been one of our most important challenges to ensure that there is super fluid global staffing of talent, and ensure that projects get started within a few hours and completed in the fastest possible way. And I think what we really excel at is speed. I think almost no other company in this category or among agencies can really beat us on speed. And I think that's something that many people are frustrated with their agencies about. It takes a long time to get started. It takes a long time to complete projects, and a lot of time is being spent on internal meetings and discussing back and forth, and so we're quite good at executing and moving very quickly.
Very cool. That's awesome. Tell me about the company. So like, are you in person? Are you remote? Where is everybody? How does it work?
Yeah, so we're fully remote, and we've been since the start, and for a long while everyone was like, that's super weird, and I'm not sure if you can even remember, but pre-COVID everyone was super skeptical about remote, and it was a hard time for us convincing companies to become customers, but after COVID it's been completely legitimized, and so we're today around 700 people in 65 different countries, I think, really all over the world. I think the largest bulk of people are in Latin America, so Brazil and Argentina and Colombia, top 3 countries there, and our largest standalone country is South Africa. And then in addition, we have a ton of people in Southern and Western Europe. Not a lot of people in the US. Some people in the US and a few in Canada, but really, yeah, all over the world.
That's amazing. And the 700 people includes like all of the creatives and everybody who works for you. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Got it. And then, so when you're putting together teams, are you thinking about building a culture for all the freelancers too, and like the full-time folks? Like, how do you differentiate? Like, how do you think about that? How do you think about culture? How do you think about communications? How do you think about like operations across that scale? That's a lot of human beings to be coordinating, get them aligned, figure out the ways of making decisions in a Superside way. Like, tell me about that.
Absolutely. So now today we've moved from a freelancer model that we started out with towards a model where almost everyone are full-time, but still kind of relatively flexible, so can sort of scale up and down how much you work if you are a creative, and really sort of like control your own time still. But everyone works somewhere between 70 to 150% if you want to make more money in one month. So that's kind of the model there. In terms of culture, we're treating everyone the same, and everyone's part of the same Slack, and everyone's part of the same company, irrespective of whether you're an engineer or a customer-facing a designer or a creative strategist or whatever it might be. How we think about culture, I mean, it's the most important thing for us. It's reflected in everything that we're doing. Over time, or I remember kind of starting out Superside, I always thought, values and vision and mission it's like very Americanized BS thing. But as I've grown and learned the hard way through actual experience, I've gradually become incredibly convinced that values is the most important thing. And when we're hiring, values is the thing that we're placing the most importance on, more so than experience, more than competency or anything else really. And I just found it to be the only really real way to enforce culture over time, to treat it as the centerpiece of the recruiting process, and also to make it an integral part of performance management. So when we do our semi-annual reviews, then values is kind of half of that piece, and it's really the primary reason for any terminations that we're doing of people is if there are issues with values the way we see it.
That's so cool. That's amazing. It's funny, and you talk about it being this like US thing, the like values and mission. And I remember when we were like 10 people, and my co-founder Brendan and I were like, there's something about the fact that we're still doing this, and this is actually fun, and that like there's something unique here. And we're like, I think is this our culture? Is this what culture is? And we started talking about it, and I remember, I'll never forget the feeling of like, we had an all company meeting, which was just 10 people. It was like, we're going to show you this slide deck that we made like an hour earlier. It's like, hey, everyone, come to the kitchen. Let's look at this. And we're like, we need to talk about values, and we need to define our values. And we have some ideas, but we need your help. And I'll never forget this designer on the team. She was like, what is this big company stuff we're doing? Like, what is this? This is like, why do you have us doing this right now? I look back on it because it was like, if anything, like investing in that more even earlier would have helped us. And I think it's like so funny because it feels so soft, but it is actually like the core thing eventually. It's just like, can you solve problems, and can you make decisions in a way that's aligned with the company and what makes sense? And actually that's hard because there's so many details you got to get right, and nuances you have to get right to actually scale that feeling and scale that experience as you grow. So, I mean, it's just funny to hear you say that, because it really brings that back, that feeling of, is this
Absolutely.
BS? Or no, it's not actually.
So what is so it can be BS. Obviously, lots of companies have BS values. So I think that's the problem, right? But it can also be very powerful if you do it right. So what's your values? Or what's your number one value, maybe, instead of we don't have to run through?
Yeah, we have, you know what? I feel like I want to show you our values. Can I do this, Sylvie?
Show those values.
Because I'll share the screen and then they'll just be in the recording. This is my favorite way to show it. So we think of our values as the way to make decisions at Wistia. This is what we use internally. It's also on the website. The first one is center the customer. And so we strive to understand and meet our customers' needs by prioritizing what's best for them and providing authentic, exceptional experiences. And so when you're making decisions, take the customer into account, think about the customer, put the customer first is the idea. The next one is keep it simple. To find simple solutions that are clear and easy to understand, we focus on the core of the problems we're trying to solve. So this is like basically from hard-won lessons of trying to make things too complex. Like I feel like a lot of times, I don't know if you've had the same experience, you come up with a solution that's really complex and you feel really smart. And then it's so like taxing to continue to manage this complex solution or communicate to other people that we'd prefer to make a simpler decision because that's going to be easier to maintain, easier for people to understand, better for customers, better to the team than a more complex one. That make sense?
Yeah, for sure. We have something similar. I like it, but it's very hard to implement this. Keep it simple.
It is hard. It's like that's why it's a value. It's actually hard to do. The next one for us is stay nimble, and so we take action even when things are ambiguous. We pivot fast. We find a better approach to new information. So this idea is we're constantly learning. We need you to stay nimble as we're in markets that are changing a lot. Our product is changing a lot. The competitive landscape is changing a lot. We can't get too married to any one solution. We need to be able to change, take ownership. So when we encounter a challenge, we figure out a way forward to resolve it together. This is like, we need you to think like an owner in the business. And the last one is focus on outcomes. So we stay super focused on the end goal. That means we're open to changing our paths and processes to get results. And so that's for us what's worked. Yeah. And my lesson is like, as we've done this more and more and more, people have adopted it more and more. And then ultimately what we don't hear is like, hey, how do you do this in a Wistia way? Like, hopefully if you have a tough decision, you can use these values to figure it out. Sorry, I went off such a tangent on this. I really wanted to go on this, but as you can see, I got too excited. So sorry for giving you my full
talking too
values
loud.
Yeah.
No, that was great. Super interesting. I love to hear about other companies' values. I feel like a lot of startups are doing it right, and a lot of big companies are doing it wrong. And I think that's part of the reasons why startups are growing and winning, and the big companies are just kind of creating this demoralizing cultures because they're not taking it seriously enough.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think in big companies too, like you can end up with a situation of people getting too political. Like it's more about how do you use your political status to move through the organization, and like how do we actually drive success. And so the wrong things can get rewarded, and that's when you see companies that are like their values are the most basic things in the world. They're like, we look for honesty and integrity. It's like, if that's the only thing you're looking for, you got a problem. Like, yeah. It's like you should be able to hire honest and people who have integrity. And if that has to be your value, you must have a number of people who are not very honest.
What are Superside's values?
Yeah,
we have I think 5 values too. Not sure if you had 5 or 6, but you have 5. So number 1 is be kind, which we think should be the number 1 value of every company, but unfortunately is not. I grew up in with parents where there wasn't a lot of rules and regulations, and I always thought that it was really strange why countries and companies would have all of these rules, and my parents really only enforced this rule of being kind, and I always thought that was such an amazing value, and we've had it in the company, and I think it's really become a huge part of who we are, and everyone says after their onboarding that why it's remarkable how nice everyone is here. And I think for me, in the 8 years or so I've been at Superside, I can only remember maybe once or twice where I've really had an actual fight with people. I just really dislike fighting, and it seems completely unnecessary to me. And then everyone's like, but then are you just all like consensus and harmony and blah blah blah, and that's why also we have our second value, which is to seek the truth. And I think being kind really ties into that very nicely, because psychological safety, I think, is very important for people to dare to challenge the status quo, and to dare to challenge authority, and so that's our second value. The third value is called speed is safety, which is sort of a mountain climbing tagline, which is because when you're out and you're trying to climb a mountain, and it's very tempting to make sure everything is like super secure and the ropes, and you check everything, but most of the injuries in the mountains actually happens because people aren't making it to the top fast enough, and so they kind of just get stuck in the middle. Or get hit by a stone or something. But there can always be bad weather can come, or the sun goes down, and then and that's kind of a metaphor, obviously, for changing conditions in the industry, and the need to just kind of continuously move forward, and it's just better to make a decision and go for it than to stand still. The fourth one is decide locally, which we think is a super important value. It's partly also a Norwegian value, where we all grew up being farmers and fishermen in small villages along the town, and hated the Danish king that came and tried to collect taxes, and we all just wanted to decide locally. And so yeah, we're trying to just let people be autonomous and run with their own thing. It's not always easy, but we're trying to commit to that. And then finally, it's a value that's called roll up your sleeves. I think very similar to what you said, around taking ownership, but even more kind of trying to applaud the people that are doing the dishes, if you will. It's like you go to a cabin trip with some friends or something, and there's always there's always one guy that makes the steak, and that's it. He just doesn't do the dishes, and he doesn't make the salad, and he just makes the steak. And
I love that.
and we're trying to just like applaud taking the dishes and not making a big deal out of that. It's not that annoying to do the dishes, and everyone needs to do it once in a while.
Especially if everyone does it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have that culture where everyone just like contributes after dinner, puts everything into the dishwasher and cleans up, it takes 5 minutes and everything's done. And so you get that culture in the company, and it's really nice for everyone when everyone answers their email on time and does all their boring things is done on time. And it's hard for me, it's hard for everyone, because it means that you just have to do all of those boring tasks, but at the end of the day, like a job is a job, and you get paid because it's a job, and there are some boring tasks involved in running a company, so that's life. And yeah, people seem to appreciate that value.
I love that. I'm laughing. I think it's just like a job. It's a job, so you do it. And there's things that you don't want to do, and you do them, and you just try to get them. And that seems like speed is safety is helpful too on that. The faster you get through this, the better off you are.
Totally.
Do you use mountaineering? Like, is that your base of like analogies in the business when you're explaining things?
Mountain climbing? What do you call it?
Everything. Yeah, I mean, in Norway you have to do all of the above to get some value out of it. The whole country is just like rock. Totally. Yeah, I think there's lots of metaphor. I think for me personally, mountain climbing and mountaineering is also very useful, because you get to very vividly experience fear and anxiety, and it's an emotion that you also very frequently encounter in startup life, especially as a founder. And I used to be kind of just like ignore it, and in mountain climbing it's just usually much better to stop and pause and breathe and take control over the fear. And so for me personally, that's been just very, very useful to observe how I'm feeling to a greater extent. And then nature in general is very, very useful to me in many ways, but it's also something that is very common across all the people in our company, and it's something that we can all share. I think partly because we're building a remote company to just reduce the need to fly around the world, and reduce the need to have office buildings and all those things. But it's also so much beautiful nature in so many different countries, and many of the people in Superside are really good at taking advantage of that. So I think I think some of the analogies work well.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny because we had a moment where we were talking about mountaineering a lot at Wistia too, for how we operate. And it's because I met this guy, Ed Viesters, who is this he's a U.S. climber. He climbed all 14 of the world's 8,000 meter peaks without supplemental oxygen.
Wow.
And he's a cool, super inspiring guy, and wrote a book about all of this. And his thing was that the top is halfway. And as you were talking about your analogies, there's something about the power of that, of like having the right story to rally people and build a culture. And like the top is halfway for us for a while was like a big deal. So it's like, hey, you want to get this feature done, or you want to build this thing. But once it's released, that's actually when we're now at the top. So you have to save energy because we have to get back down, and we have to market this thing. We have to support this thing. We have to sell this thing. And like, if we're not planning for the second half, then we're going to be in trouble. And he talked about a similar thing in terms of like the people who always run into trouble on Everest, or the people who like, because he's climbed Everest a bunch of times and been like a guide for folks and stuff, is the people who are like, they don't save anything so they get to the top with no energy left, basically. He has some story, I'm going to forget the specifics, but he was within like 90 meters of the top and he turned around because he just felt like there wasn't enough time left in the day. The conditions were getting bad. He could see how close it was, but he felt that it was just still going to be too dangerous. And that was one of the years that like there was like a huge number of people who got like destroyed by a storm in Everest. A bunch of people died. And so it was kind of this crazy thing. I also think it's just the power of that story of you talking about the speed of safety and also managing your fear and anxiety. I can picture it. Like I can picture you say it's like on the mountain in a brief moment, catching a breath. And it's like, should we keep going or not? Or like, is this actually like what's in our control or what isn't in our control? Which I just wrote like a long thing about this the other day on LinkedIn, actually, because I get that question a lot about how do you manage stress? And it sounds like that's one of the ways you do it, is you like anchor back to your mountaineering experience. And it's just cool for me how those things like are fitting together.
So how do you manage stress? It's I think one of the most important. I think that I'm quite good at it. I think it's one of the things that I'm quite good at compared to many other people. And there's lots of things that I'm not so good at. But it's something that I've reflected a lot on, and I'm just very interested in. And I think for many people, not being able to handle stress very well is like massively inhibiting them from realizing their potential. And so I think it's just such an important topic. And so and I have lots to learn still. So we'd be curious to hear what you wrote and what's your perspective.
Yeah, I can give you the short version, and I'm also interested to hear how you do this. I mean, for me, it's a combination of a few different things. I found meditation at one point, and it was like I wrote about this in the post, but I was on vacation. I shouldn't have been checking my email for work. I checked my email. I got bad news. It was like I was in Greece. It was probably like midnight, and I just couldn't go to sleep, and my mind was like racing, just like could not stop thinking about the problems. Like, what can I do to solve the problem? What should I do to solve the problem? Like, how do I solve this problem? Like, just worrying. And then it occurred to me, I was like, I've heard that meditation can help with this. Like, I don't really believe in it. It seems like BS, but like maybe I should try. And I like downloaded an app, and I did like a 10-minute meditation, and part of it is you're counting your breaths in and out. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you're doing this. And as I was doing it, I couldn't get past like 4 or 5. Like by the time I would get to 4 or 5, like my brain would race back to the stressful thing at work. And then eventually, in that first 10-minute period of doing this, right near the last second, I realized I had counted to 10. And then I counted to 10 again. And I took a breath, and suddenly the realization came to me of like, oh, this problem existed before I read the email. It's going to exist after I read the email. There's nothing I can do about this right now. It's like in the moment, it like got me in the moment, and I just went to sleep. And since that day, I when I realized I could actually manage some of my stressful thoughts by just realizing that they are just thoughts, they're not me. That was like a huge unlock. And so that sent me down a whole course of like doing meditation every day. I did like 500 days in a row, and I have a much easier time now if I need to call that up, like I can call it up. I do hard workouts every day. And for me, like, and there's a lot of research on this, emotional stress is like your ability to handle it is also correlated to your ability to handle physical stress. So if you can handle a lot of physical stress, you can handle more emotional stress. And there's this great book called The Art of Learning by this guy, Josh Waitzkin, who is yeah, you know him, the chess master who's like searching for Bobby Fischer's about him. But he'd be under so much emotional stress. His heart rate's up. He dropped like 7 pounds like during like one of those tournaments, which is like a common thing now for chess players. And the way he was able to increase his ability to handle the emotional stress was actually to increase his ability to handle physical stress beforehand. And this has now become like a common thing. So if you have a very stressful job, it turns out if you work out a lot and you lift heavy things or you push yourself in runs or whatever the thing is for you, if you do a lot of runs, they get easier. And that's your body being able to handle more stress. And so that actually connects to the emotional stress as well. And there's some other stuff that I like to talk about in the post, but those are some of the anchors for me that I think about a lot that make it much easier for me to handle stress. But what about you? What kinds of things do you do?
I think those are great. I think just having some method is useful for everyone. For me, I think got started with all these things after the military when it's a draft in Norway. I wasn't like particularly excited to go, but you kind of have to, and went around like on these practice things like shooting without and so I got tinnitus from that. It's not like a terrible thing, but after the army then I got in touch with some like or the army put me on some program where there's some like physiotherapist or someone that just gives you all these like techniques, which is basically close to meditation and stretching and these things, and for me it was just super instantly useful. And I was 19, and this is now 16 years ago almost. And so I've been doing some things like that on and off for 16 years, not necessarily meditation, but I then have this like tinnitus thing as kind of a canary in the coal mine. When it starts to beep more, I have to slow down a little bit and do some of these techniques. And so it sort of stops me from then pushing into this like bad territory where sometimes I see people go where you're just like constantly checking your phone, like completely manic, like refreshing, like answering emails, and I just cannot go into that territory. So that's the one thing that I do. And then the second thing is kind of what I believe more and more, and I think what a lot of people are forgetting amid all of this like meditation stuff is the power of just rationally thinking about stuff. And so as an example with relation to this sleeping thing, and is at least for me, there's this poem in Håvamål, which is the old Viking wisdom poems from like the 12th century. And I just love the old stuff. It's so strange and weird, and they were all just chopping each other's heads off and stuff. But amid all of that like violence, there's some like beautiful quotes and wisdom, and I'm not going to be able to translate from English, but there's this one 2-line poem that just says, "Foolish is the one who lies awake in the night thinking about their problems, unable to have energy for the next day to actually solve those problems." And something that I think about every time I'm not able to sleep, I just think, you're being just so stupid. This is so foolish. The Vikings knew it. Your mom knew it. Everyone knows it. Like,
so you just will yourself back to sleep.
Yeah, I'm very much a believer in the power of like rational thinking, like sitting down, like you can close your eyes and meditate and think about your breath and stuff. I think that's totally great, and that's like one technique. But I think it's important to have a multitude of techniques in your toolbox. And I think just sitting down and trying to actually think is something that a lot of people have forgotten how to do, myself included. I remember the other day I read through my high school writing exams, and I was expecting to find these incredibly stupid and dull texts because I was like 18 at the time, but I was like, wow, this is actually much better than I had expected. And I think it's potentially like the last time I sat down for 3 hours or 4 hours or however long it lasted to fully concentrate without a phone on my side and like really write something that I thought was compelling. And ever since, I've just been writing emails and Slack messages that, are just terrible writing. And my writing now is terrible. And if my writing is terrible, then probably my thinking is terrible too. And I think a lot of people have kind of lost that ability to sit for a prolonged period of time. And you kind of need to go through that. But it's so painful, right? You need to go through that initial 30 minutes of boredom. And it's very annoying to go through kind of the force of boredom. But when you emerge on the other side, it's actually pretty nice and pretty cool, and you can think and you will be kind of amazed at the clarity of your own thinking. So I like to try to do that. Supposedly Einstein sat for like 8 hours non-stop without writing, just like thinking about these physics problems inside his head. So maybe that art is completely lost for us.
I don't think it's completely lost, but I 100% agree with you. It's actually the other thing I talked about in the post was like, not exactly that, but basically that we forget that thinking is work. And like in the early days, you basically have nothing but time. So you're exactly what you're talking about is like, you're like, oh, what should I do now? I don't know. You're just like thinking and doing, and then things get busy, and like we have a cultureness of like rewarding busyness. And I think, especially in the US, and I feel like breaking through that and say actually not being busy is what you want, because that's how you can manage that stuff, and that's where you can get your breakthroughs.
Yeah, completely agree. I hate being busy myself, both like in the weekends or in the weekdays. I just hate the feeling of being.
You gotta chill. You love to chill outside in the nature. That's what you love to do.
Exactly.
I can tell.
Exactly.
Especially with 2 little kids who, like, you really need to chill. Okay. So Fredrik, I have one last segment I want to get into, which is the rapid fire segment. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Try to go for like 1 word or 1 sentence answers. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. First question. What is the best advice that someone has ever given you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember actually someone gave me the advice when I asked him for advice about raising kids, and he said, don't listen to any advice. And I just thought that was great, and I was like, yeah, I'll just figure it out. And we're reading and we're taking advice, but generally it is nice to try to figure it out for yourself and find your own path.
If you could trade places with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
I think for me, I would love to trade places with someone who is in the middle of a polar expedition to Antarctica. It seems such a hassle to like prepare all the stuff and get all the logistics in place, but presumably really beautiful when you're right in the middle there. And I'm sure I could do one day, especially if I could choose a relatively sunny and nice day.
I love that. It's like, I don't want to do the prep. I don't want to find the stuff. I just want to be there in the moment when it's beautiful. Then I'm out. I love that. Okay. What's one superpower you have?
Yeah, I think it's gonna come back to this this stress tolerance thing. In addition to the stuff and techniques that we've spoken about, I think that I am also naturally inclined to not stress out so much about things. I was just raised that way, I suppose, and so I guess my brain has adapted to handle those things reasonably well.
That's amazing. What's one superpower you want to have?
Yeah, that's another great question, and it can't be like flying and
whatever you want.
Whatever you want, yeah.
Whatever you want. I think that it would be great to be able to it would be great to see into the future. I think it would be amazing to be able to use that to help people and try to make the world a better place. It's an interesting world. I mean, I wasn't like that worried about the world, but increasingly I am, and so being able to look into the future would be possibly quite useful.
Well, I love that, and I hope that Superside's future is bright and your family's future is bright. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people connect with you and Superside to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a qualified buyer persona with a budget, then you can send an email to Fredrik@superside.com. And if you are not, then you can just go to the website at superside.com and check us out.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Likewise. Great to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, you really are delighted.
I'm a fan.
You're very delighted over here.
I'm a fan of Fredrik. I mean, when he started talking about Viking poems, he's like,
"Oh,
amidst all the killing."
when we hit the Viking poems, I was like, "Yes, this is it. This is what I thought we were going to get it recited," and I was ready for it. I was ready for it.
I love a Viking poem. Yeah.
I love like tried and true advice, like advice that has existed for a long time and it still makes sense today.
Yeah.
Is always like so awesome.
Yeah.
You know? And
never gets old.
Never gets old. That was great. And it's just like interesting to talk to somebody who, you know, he's almost like so soft spoken and like casual about the business he's built, but obviously he's done a very hard thing and scaled it a ton and has huge opportunity in front of him. And it's fun to talk to somebody who is just kind of so, I'm not going to say casual, but just like calm.
Yeah, calm.
About this process. Because it's just, I guess this is what I'll say. We talk to so many different entrepreneurs on the show, and like people's styles and vibes are so different. But what you can see is you can have many different styles and vibes and you can make something successful. And I feel like that's like,
it's very true.
That's like really inspirational. And like, he's a great example of that.
That's totally true. I think that's a great observation that, yeah, people come in different packages and some have that like kind of nonstop energy and some have this sort of like measured way and like very rational way of like talking through things. And like, yeah, you get great products either way. And Superside, you know, when I was first like learning about it, it seemed a little bit like Fiverr and like Upwork, but I mean, the differences are pretty significant in that, like, it's a subscription service and then you get a dedicated team. Like, I think that was really interesting. The other thing is some of these interviews feel like old friends, right? And then some, when you don't know the guest, feel like first friend dates. And like, this was a super fun first friend date.
Yeah, I like that way of putting it too. That was cool. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff about their model that jumped out to me and got me excited about what they're doing. And I hope that people like give it a shot and like let us know what you think. And I think my favorite part was at the end when it's like, how can people learn more? It's like, well, if you are a qualified prospect, please email me. That was just like unabashed. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't follow my newsletter on this thing and then just come on and email me direct. Like, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. And speaking of that, you know, you can always email us direct too. Let's be clear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lines of communication, the channels are open.
Keep it open. You can email us at ttlpod@whiskey.com. We're also both on X.com and also on LinkedIn, where we spend a lot of time these days. And just don't hesitate to reach out.
And Instagram. Actually, let's not forget about Instagram.
It's every major social platform. And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to it. Helps get the word out there. It helps us get better guests. It helps us make this show more interesting. And I think, is that it, Sylvie?
That's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. All right, until next time.